Hey everyone, welcome to your guided video annotations for Follow the Drinking Gourd. As you know, there's also a read-along here. I have already read the story, so I'm going to kind of just flow through as best as I can, focus on the characterization aspects. So remember, we're using our color coding right here at the top. Alright? Remember, child, it'd be a secret, Mama told me. You can't tell nobody. So I'm already going to just kind of make myself a little mental note. I'm going to highlight. I know this seems kind of silly because you're like, why are you already doing all this? But I'm just going to put my characters, mother, and it's a son. His name is John Boy. He's the only one who has a name. So characters, mother and son, John Boy, and I think it's just important that we know that they are slaves, and that'll become apparent as we go through. Okay? Why not, Mama? I asked, looking up at her face that shone like polished ebony in the dim moonlight. Okay, so just looking at this, you can tell that this young man admires his mother. So if this would be a good time for you to characterize him, if you'd like, and say son admires his mother. I'm not. That's up to you. Just because of the way he compares her. Okay, so this is actually one of those times I could highlight this, because even though this is a simile, it's also technically an analogy. So I'm going to highlight this in purple because I am seeing a comparison. So I would put comparison. So I'm going to put analogy out here to the side just so I can think about it. And this tells me he admires mother because of the word ebony and polished implies worth. Okay, so he admires her. So that's how I think about analogies when I see them. Okay, because it be a secret that will take us to freedom one day, and that is the most precious secret of all. It was dark on that night, surrounded by the whine and whir of mosquitoes and crickets that Mama told me. I remember we were sitting on the steps of our ramshackle cabin, looking up at the stars. Mama pointed out the pictures that filled the heavens, tracing them with her fingers in a soft voice as they told me. She talked, and I listened, and we both relished the company together after a long day's work in the field. So you'll see that there's a footnote right here. And this story, I actually kind of threw you a bone. The author puts footnotes a lot when he's alluding to something. So in this particular case, when he's saying that they worked long days in the fields together, this is actually an allusion. So it's, weirdly enough, it's an allusion to slavery. These two particular slaves are field hands. So it just kind of tells me what they're doing. He's also, when he says, my mom pointed at pictures that filled the heavens, that part is also, I'm going to put it right here, pictures that filled the heavens. That's also an allusion to the constellation. So he's not outright saying, like, we point out the constellation in the skies, he's saying that they're the pictures in the heavens. She went quiet when she spoke again. Her voice had a new sound to it, a strong, serious tone. John Boy, she said, you see this picture? She traced the path of the strange shape. That there's the drinking gourd. Following her finger, I could see the gourd in the sky like a pattern that held in place with diamond pins. So again, we have an allusion and an analogy here. This is very rich with it. The allusion, of course, is to the Big Dipper, which I explained to you guys. The analogy portion of it is that like a pattern held in place with diamond pins, so he's comparing it to it. When he says that it's held in place by diamond pins, again, he's putting, comparing to diamond pins, puts worth on it. And so he's telling you by saying that this is what this looks like. So he's giving you that relationship here, that comparison. He's saying that the drinking gourd is has a lot of worth, because diamonds have a lot of worth, right? So you have to think about that right there. So I'm not going to tell you what the illusion is, but that is what the analogy portion is about. So the illusion, clearly to the drinking gourd part, you know that. Now, if I wanted to, I need to start thinking about my settings and stuff here. So I might like go back in a minute and think about it a little bit retroactively. But if we want to talk about some of our key incidences right here, this would also be a key incident. Okay, so she's telling him about the drinking gourd. That's a big deal. And then, of course, we have our setting, which is their shack and everything, which just kind of helps me understand that they are, of course, slaves, and this is what they're talking about. So you guys can see there's a lot going on here, which is why I write things out to the side for us as well. There we go. And then there's a whole bunch of characterization you could have been focusing on with this, like the way he talks about his mother, what kind of person she is. So you can see so far that his mother is stern and hopeful. So hopefully you're picking up on that and you're doing your own annotations as well. For the sake of the video, I'm having to abbreviate my annotations a little bit, and I wanted to focus mainly in on the big ones. But you're supposed to be kind of paying attention to everything because you have 2 days to digest and really break this down. Now, if you follow the line from the edge of the gourd straight up, you'll see that especially bright star. See it? I replied, squinting to make the picture clear. That's the North Star. If you follow it, it'll guide you north to freedom. So again, we got another footnote, which usually indicates, of course, that he is alluding to something. So in this particular case, and I'll give you this illusion, he's alluding to the fact that historically, so this is a historical illusion, slavery was banned by northern states before the southern states. Okay, this means that slavery was still federally allowed, which means that each state can make their own decision, but northern states, many of them chose to abolish slavery earlier than the southern states. So many slaves ran north to freedom. So one of the rules in the Constitution is that if one state says something is illegal, if you move to that state, like, you have to follow that rule. So if a slave escapes up north without their master, the slave becomes free in theory, unless someone comes and gets them and has papers that they prove. So states have to respect other states' laws within reason, which is why Southerners could travel up north and not have their slaves taken from them, because they would have papers that would prove that they were a slave from another state. It was a whole thing. Honestly, you could look it up. It was a lot. All right, freedom, I echoed, hardly understanding. Yes, honey, freedom. And one day, me and you are going to follow the drinking gourd to freedom. Okay, so this is actually an illusion, and I'm pretty sure because of what we've done thus far, you can figure out what it is alluding to. Okay, so we're going to follow that drinking gourd to freedom. That whole line is an allusion to something that we've already read. The next evening, we squatted together in the stuffy gloom of our cabin. She was busy scrubbing the iron pot that held our evening meal of corn pone, salt pork, and greens. I was beside her trying to mend the handle of our piggin with some twine, and I was busy mulling over the strange thought of freedom that Mama had brought up the previous night before. Mama, how are we going to get to freedom? Hush, child, not so loud, she admonished me. So if you are doing your context clue chart, that's a word you probably might want to put in there. There'll be trouble if anybody hears this talk about freedom. Her eyes rolled white in the dim light as she looked around, making certain there wasn't anyone within hearing range. Excuse me. When she was satisfied that we were alone, she began to talk in a low voice. Well, child, you know that there are people who hate slavery up north, free black people and some white folks who would do anything to stop it. If we can just cross the Ohio River in the northern states, There will be people who do whatever we have to do and just to help runaway slaves. Okay, so all of this has a couple of different allusions in it. One being to the Underground Railroad. The other being to abolitionists, which are these northern people they are speaking of who hated slavery and wanted it to be abolished. So those are two allusions that are being made here. And then, of course, use those footnotes to help you. Those footnotes are your friends, my dear children, your friends. Then what, Mama? There'll be them good folks to help us, and we can guide us to the promised land, to freedom. Again, another beautiful allusion here. This one is biblical in nature. I'm going to let you use the footnote, and I want you to kind of take your own notes about it. This is not going to be one of the ones that I talk about in my video with the chart. So just know about that. When we going? As soon as the time is right. And until then, we just going to trust the good Lord, and we going to pray. Master Jesus hears our prayers, and one day he going to answer them. Okay? So this is actually, you could say that this is an allusion because it kind of sort of is. It's a historical one. Most slaves were of Christian faith, hence why we have a lot of those biblical allusions. The day passed in the monotonous rhythm of the heat and labor, and Mama and I worked side by side in the cotton fields, the sun scorching down on our ragged, off-mended clothes. Only Sunday served to break up the drudgery and toil. Okay? So this again is another allusion. I want you to use your footnote. But most slaves were forced. This is an allusion to Sunday being the day of rest. Most slaves were forced into Christianity, and then of course once they adopted it and learned about it, they accepted it on their own, and it became a whole thing. But because of that, most Sundays is the Sabbath day, and Sabbath day is the day that you are not supposed to work, so they didn't have to work Sundays. One Sunday, Mama and I again sat on the cabin steps. She was mending an old shirt, and I was busy occupied scratching some chiggers and thinking about freedom again. Okay, so if you want to, this would be a good time to really think about some characterization. So I'm going to highlight green. I'm going to let you think about that on your own. But like I said, you should be doing that part on your own as we go. I'm focusing in on just the illusions and the thought process here. Mama, I've been thinking, I said eventually. What happens if we get caught? Mama's head snapped up and a warning glint came into her eye. John boy, don't talk so loud. Remember, it's a secret. I know, but there ain't anyone here to hear anything. I gestured at the dusty, deserted yard in front of our small cabin. So what happens? I asked again. Worry clouded her eyes, and she shook her head. I just ain't going to think about that, she said finally. I just ain't. I'm going to do my best and pray to Jesus and just hope that we make it, because I can't face having you live a slave for the rest of your life, and let alone face my life for the rest of my life. We just got to get freedom. So all of this right here is characterization. I'm not going to finish reading it, but I want you to kind of think about what does this teach us about his mother. And then, of course, we have an allusion right here to this idea of him not being able to read or write. And then there's a footnote to kind of help you understand that allusion a little bit more as to what she's referring to. But Mama, I heard that if Master catches their runaway slaves, they'll whip them or worse. Again, this is rich in historical allusion. You have to kind of understand what happened to slaves when they ran away. Use those footnotes to help you. The footnote, go read it, learn about it. Why is this such an important thing to mention? Okay, I know, she said, but this ain't going to stop me. Her tears glistened in her eyes, attract a careworn face. I'm going to follow my hope to freedom until I've reached the promised land. Okay, I'm going to take you with me, John Moy. She reached over, grabbed my hand, and squeezed it hard. One day soon, you and me going to follow the drinking gourd all the way to freedom. And then, of course, it just wraps up right here. I'm not going to finish reading because I got 20 seconds left. But I want you to think about the characterization that comes in these last two things. I don't think there are any real illusions that we need to talk about, but just know that the things that I did not type about are things that I want you to go use your footnotes to help you with down here. The numbers match, or things that I want you to think about by yourself. You are expected to do some of this on